All right, guys. So this week we're really excited to provide you with a headphone wearing opportunity. We've got Studio, who is going to be providing all of our listeners with a 15% off their headphones if you use our code. So to tell you a little bit about Studio, they want to revolutionize the way people see headphones as not just a tech device, but also an accessory. For the stylish ones out there, you know what that's about. Currently, the headphones market can offer you one of two things, style or tech. And Studio aims to give you both. So with their modern Scandinavian design, they're going to be providing you a product that matches the quality even as the highest rated headphones on the market, but for a fraction of the cost. So you can head to studio.com. That's SUDIO. It's like studio without the T, and receive 15% off your headphones by using the discount code MASKulinity. Now you know that you have to use the K, otherwise no headphones for you. So now let's move on to the show. Hey guys, we are back for another week. This is Samantha and Zessie.
It's your boy Ramoy George Phillip, the first.
And this is Maskulinity. Yeah, so how you doing, Ramoy?
I got my knitting.
Oh, that's a little early,
I was
right?
going to try to do
hot.
this. Can I knit and podcast at the same time?
I mean, you could find out.
We're going to do it.
That looks really nice. Are you making that for somebody or is that for you?
That's for the crib. It's like a decorative panel. I said decorative panel.
Wow.
Yeah. What's going on with you?
Hella fancy. Well, I'm chilling. Had a good week. I stumbled upon this show on HBO, which it's about this guy who he's like living in LA, but he's like he's like South Asian and has like his basically his mom and his uncle who's got like the most amazing haircut, and then his wife and his 3 kids, and it's about him like balancing like being
a brown dude.
Being a brown dude. I'm pretty sure he's like from England or somewhere where they speak well like that. And anyway, it's like one of those things where it was like you're like watching him struggle like to balance all of these things and stuff, and then they go to like the therapist office together and they have like a conversation as a family, and it turns out that he just needs to be able to learn to ask for help, which I thought was really interesting. Anyway, so we'll be posting a little bit about it on the social media so that you guys can watch the show too. I thought it was pretty funny. But anyway, without further ado, we are gonna go ahead and get started on what we're going to talk about today. So
yeah, I mean we've been lucky enough to talk about so many different topics near and dear to our hearts, right? Specifically, given all the commotion lately about immigration, it's been great to have a real opportunity to get real about how masculinity plays into that dynamic. Last month was all about mental health, and it's been really great to continue addressing that.
Yeah, and now we've talked about relationships.
Oh,
yeah, I know, we're about to get real. But there's something that we haven't really talked about, like on any kind of real level, and that's romance.
Ooh,
yeah. Ramoy's excited because he's an expert. We've talked about this. So, I mean, for many, I feel like, relationships with significant others is actually a really huge part, if not the biggest part of their lives. And so today we're going to talk about how the performance of masculinity manifests.
Now, I do know about that because I've been mad dudeish about dating a lot of my times in my life. So.
Well, I mean, maybe that's what I meant by expert. So, and what the consequences of our notions of masculinity can be on the quality of those relationships. So, like I said, Ramoy an expert, me not. So today we're excited to actually have someone who can speak to it from a more critical lens. And we welcome Imran Siddiqui.
Yes, Imran Siddiqui.
It's such a beautiful name.
It
just
so
rolls off the
poetic
tongue.
Imran Siddiqui.
My teachers can never pronounce it, so thank you for saying that.
No, it's true. Thank you so much for coming to make sense of it all for us today. You're a writer, filmmaker, activist. You've written for the likes of The Atlantic, of BuzzFeed, the HuffPost, and a bunch of other illustrious.
You wrote for The Establishment a lot, I saw.
Yeah.
I love The Establishment.
Yeah.
They're dope.
I don't even know what that is. So great. So your work focuses on challenging the representation of gender and race in the media. So welcome, because we're really excited to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm not an expert on relationships. Just want to clarify that, but I'm excited to talk about.
He put together a cool movie that was about dating and relationships, so that's good enough.
Yeah, I felt very
it was on MTV.
Understood by that movie.
A bunch of people saw that. Kids saw that. Old men like me saw that.
Pretty sure 10 people have watched it. Thank you.
Oh,
We
good.
got 12 now.
Exactly. So romance. So, I mean, I appreciate that you're here to provide some perspective on this topic.
Yeah.
And before we really get to the meat of it, right, just want to know a little bit about, like, what had you kind of start to explore this, the topics of race and gender, like, for a living?
Yeah, so that's a long story, but obviously I am a person of color, man of color. But, it was really, the short version of it is, college, read some stuff, had a lot of women, particularly women of color, who pushed me and encouraged me to change who I was or to read more. And I would credit that with kind of like sparking it inside of me. And then having a really unique opportunity in when I moved to San Francisco to work on a film called Misrepresentation, or the film was kind of already done, but I was brought on to be its marketing person. And then I had a further crash course in learning about issues of gender representation. And then from there, that experience of working there, that movie, and we made a follow-up movie called The Mask You Live In. And that experience...
Oh, shit. With the Jen...
Siebel-Nielsen.
Yeah. Oh, my God. Cool.
I don't know anything about what you're talking about right now.
That's amazing. That's one of the big inspirations for trying to do all this whole thing. So that's so cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Damn.
And that experience both further encouraged me to like think deeper, and I was exposed to many more women of color working on these issues online and in person. I would go to these events, but the experience of going to kind of like feminist events and being the only man in the room, and often people being like, "Why are you here?" Got me to think deeper about why I was there, and then also about how our, how we were making films and how we were being inclusive or not. And so that pushed me to get to that intersection of race and gender as the thing I wanted to write about and to think about in creatively. So and then today I also work for the Center for Media Justice, the South Asian American Digital Archive, and in those
shout out to Sada.
Yeah, shout out to Sada. In those roles, I'm also trying to think about how I can bring in perspectives of always, not just my experience but others' experiences and also how they show up on screen. So that's the short version of that, I think, maybe. And love came in as just, I love romantic films. And so
man.
Yeah. And I love movies, and I always wanted to be a filmmaker. And so I was working on these documentaries and still wanted, in my heart to be my own filmmaker. And I still love watching romantic films. But when you do that, when you're being critical of representation and gender and race, and then you yourself are going to movies, it starts to become impossible not to bring that perspective into everything you see. And because romantic films were the things that I wanted to watch, I started to be much more critical of those, and just became kind of an obsession. So, watching them, critiquing them, talking about them. So,
well, it's fairly apt that you're talking about movies, because me and Sam, we have this ongoing like argument, conversation maybe, between what is nurture versus what is nature, right? And
I mean, you agree with me by now, so, but we could talk about it.
So the question that we pose, or I pose, that we argue over is, are men born with like an instinctual masculinity, which I would say yes, mostly. And Sam says, or she makes the argument, does the world around us teach us what is masculine, right? So again, Sam would make the argument that besides family dynamics, movies, TVs, books, etc., all that teaches us from an early age what is masculine and what isn't. Now, with that all in mind, Imran, can you speak more about, how movies supposedly, in air quotes, teach masculinity?
Okay. Before we continue, I just want to, I do think that obviously this testosterone and stuff like that manifests. I believe, though, that those traits are nurtured to then become this like overt performance. Please continue.
Oh, you get your own stage right there.
I think
Yes.
before, we should clarify, because being born a man, like what does that really mean? We have to think about, if you're talking about sex versus gender, and so, if you're a person who was assigned at birth that you're male, then I guess if we think about that as being born a man, I mean, masculinity is then the performance of that. But if you were assigned that, I guess my point is no one's really born a man technically,
Sure.
in that sense, like
Sure.
we are given that identity, and then we then, so from my perspective, it is a learned performance. But that being said, if you're assigned that at age 0 or 0.1
Day one.
then of course from that moment forward you're already being taught, and so to separate those things is very difficult. Like if you think about things as simple as in the hospital, there's many studies that we start to treat babies differently immediately.
Sure.
when
From the jump.
when we're given a baby and told this is a male, whether we know it is or not. And so that becomes part of the conditioning from day one. And so what I think about movies is I think it's a part of that story that we're telling people we call boys, people we call girls. And that story that we're telling them, it also includes the stories from our families, the books that we read, all these things, and then the world we walk around in and we see images and advertisements. We see it in school. We see the clothes we're supposed to wear, the colors we're supposed to wear. These are all parts of how we start to learn what it means to be a boy, what it means to be a girl. And so, yeah, movies definitely are part of that. And I think that primarily because we all grew up in that same socialization, and then we go ahead and we make movies that reflect that. But I do want to make that, I think it's an important distinction because, I don't think anybody's born with any predisposed notion of how they're going to act at age 30, But, and I also think, we can go deeper into this, but, that idea though is still very much a part of our culture. And so that's actually part of why the romantic thing is so hard to break free from, because a lot of times people will revert to this idea that this is just the way I am.
Mm-hmm.
I was born this way.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So let's deepen that a little bit, right? So
yeah, let's do that.
So like speaking about romance and or romantic notions, right? So like, you always see in movies and TV, for example, like how if guy's persistent enough, if he doesn't give up,
Break her down.
Yeah, like just wear her down. Eventually he will get the girl.
Like Steve Urkel did that for like 7 seasons
I know. On Family Matters.
Thank you.
He
Wow.
even turned into Stefan Urkel.
Urkel.
I mean,
And we were taught this though. Like this
Yeah.
is what we, as young boys, we were taught this, and this.
and
can
as
get,
young girls, because I was like, yeah, Stefan Urkel for sure.
No, but like it's it's taught like if you're just persistent enough, you can break a girl down, and that it's cute on sitcoms, it's cute on romantic comedies, but in real life, could potentially be problematic.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I mean, the one thing that's been on my mind lately, always since 2016, is how we see it in, I wrote about this once, but Donald Trump is like the embodiment of like a romantic hero, in the sense that he is, he's this guy who buys into that idea that what it means to be a hero is that, you have your way with women do whatever you want for them, and that there's something romantic about that. And and I won't go too deep into this, but like there was in 2016 or sometime before the election, they asked Trump like what his top 5 favorite movies were. And most of them are pretty like standard. It's like The Godfather.
Die Hard.
Yeah. It's like there's one really funny one, but they're all like Bloodsport, But one of them was Gone with the Wind. And that struck me as so important, because it's not only racist and like, a vision of the past that's very like nostalgic for, slavery, but at the same time, it also is a romantic film. But the kind of romantic film where the hero of Gone with the Wind is a guy whose most famous line is, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. And he like picks up his wife and carries her into his room. And it's often been considered like a suggestion of rape. And then like so the fact that guy has Clark Gable as, the hero in Gone with the Wind to this day is still considered one of the most romantic
films of all time.
Yeah. Figures of all time. And that Donald Trump sees himself as that kind of guy. I think that that's very part of this thing that you learn from a young age, that like to be a lover as a man is to ignore women's desires and just dominate. And from Urkel to, Gone with the Wind, it's something that we deeply internalize. And I think when you see it in Trump, I hope makes you question it more, because I think if you look at Trump next time he talks about women, I think you'll hear some of those. He always talks like that, in my opinion.
So weird. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Trump and all this, like now that post Me Too, like now that these conversations are getting more prevalent and that we're actually questioning gender norms and roles and the intersections and the interactions between it all in like a real way, looking back like to when we grew up, whether I didn't grow up with Gone in the Wind, I'm not gonna lie, but looking back at some of the looking up at some of the other things we used to watch, it becomes super cringeworthy. Like, that MJ Michael Jackson music video of The Way You Make Me Feel, I used to love that video.
I love that video too.
I was like, damn, go get her, dude.
I was like, I want her dress. Her hair is amazing.
Anyways, I love that video. And now I watch it, I'm like, God, that's mad rapey, yo. And then one of my favorite movies of all time was The Breakfast Club. And then there's a scene where Judd Nelson's like hiding under a desk and he like sticks his head in Molly Ringwald's skirt, and it's supposed to be cute and adorable, and it's just kind of like flirtatious. Super creepy now. And these are just a couple examples of, how we were positioned to be cute and romantic and normal when pursuing a girl you thought was cute. But how did that become the norm, and why did we just accept that as the norm?
Like making her unsafe being cute.
Sure.
I mean, it's an old story. I think that's the thing. It's like, I remember, same things y'all are talking about. I love Michael Jackson, and, I love Saved by the Bell. And you see it come up in those shows, but it's so much older. We're talking about Gone with the Wind, but you go and, you go back all the way to the beginning of cinema, to like the
jazz singer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you see that this whole system, I think that's the key, is that the system of production of Hollywood films was created from the perspective of straight, cisgender, white men. And that had an impact on the way that the norms of how you make a film were created. So the perspective of the camera, the way that some of the most famous shots in film history are panning up women's bodies, like the femme fatale of the 40s. Like, you look at how the language of cinema was created from that perspective, so that the behaviors which men were already taught to do in the real world, right? Mm-hmm. They just were replicating their experiences on camera and glorifying them. And so we started to see
the male gaze,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Like the whole, yeah.
So then we started to see that, like, love stories, which have always been some of the most popular types of films made, but they've almost always been made by those straight cis white men. And we often don't make that connection because we think of, like, we call them chick flicks, but the people who have been making chick flicks from, last 100 years have mostly been men. And so men have been creating this vision of love based on their own experiences, which is living in a world, a larger system that teaches men that dominance is the way to be a real man, and that's how you're romantic. So then I think that's how we got to a place where it's so ingrained that, we think it's cute in a romantic comedy because, well, yeah, I mean, comparative to like someone, in an action film where men don't even express any emotions or like at all.
That's supposed to be sexy.
Yeah, that's supposed to be sexy. In a romantic film, you get a lot of credit just for doing like nothing. There was a quote about someone wrote about Jerry Maguire, and it's like, in Jerry Maguire, all he had to do was show up to be forgiven, and that, to me, that's like a thing in romantic films, is the guy just shows up at the end like, I'm sorry, and then it's like,
you're forgiven. I love you forever.
It's not only that, it's also, wow, you're so expressive. You're a different kind of man than I'm used to. But that we get to that point because the standard, which has been created from a certain perspective, is so low. Yes.
And like, I love that you're pointing to that, because I think of like now so many narratives get constructed through like Instagram stories and stuff like that. And you'll see like memes of like, don't be with a man unless he, picks up his kids from school and like makes his own meal and like does things like, just things that like a normal like adult should do. Like, you would never say that about a woman. You would never be like, oh, if she picks her kids up from school, like she's like a wifey material. No, because everybody is expecting women to do that, you know? And it's like, you just think of like the wildest things being now constructed as something to look forward to or to look up to rather than actually it being the standard.
Well, yeah, let's be clear here. Like, in that context, media doesn't just teach men, masculinity or how to be masculine, or masculine identifying people how to be masculine. It also affects and teaches all of us. So, Sam, as a young girl, watching these music videos, these movies, this TV, how did you feel? Like, you were being taught that this is what was acceptable for men to do, and did you feel like an internal pushback, or did you just accept it, or how does that affect you?
Well, no, I mean, I did think it was normal. Like, I think of when we were kind of thinking about this episode, I was thinking back to there was always this notion that somehow as I've always been a very independent person, but somehow it was wrong for me to be independent like that if a dude couldn't validate it, you know what I mean? And I think of movies that I used to like I used to be obsessed with Brad Pitt when I was in high school. And so when Troy came out, I was like, oh my God, I saw it 3 times, whatever. And there's this scene where he's in the I don't know, tent or whatever it was back in the day, cave with Rose Byrne. And he rolls up on her, and it's very intense, right? He rolls up on her and lifts up her skirt and just proceeds to have sex with her. And I remember being 16 or 17 and being wow, that's so sexy. And now I'm Samantha, how in what world? Because I would never perceive that to be a sexy thing, a sexy situation for myself to be in. But when I was younger, yeah, I was yeah, if somebody like Brad Pitt does that, yeah. Maybe if somebody else did that, maybe not. But Brad Pitt for sure. And I feel things like that just make me realize how much, it's not just on dudes. I think we're all complicit in upholding that type of behavior, because I think of even dating or whatever, right? If I'm dating somebody and I had to check myself, because I went on a date recently and was I mean, I don't know if he's into me. Why isn't he making any moves? And then I was Samantha, you have a podcast on masculinity. If you want to make a move, make a fucking move, And it's but I have to check myself, because I realize that patriarchal, weird notions of being even around dating, even for myself who thinks about this on a daily basis, I have to check that moment by moment, So,
yes.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad you asked that question, because I think that one of the things that we get stuck on in conversations about masculinity, and that's why I appreciate your podcast as well, is that so often the solutions which we've presented is that, oh, men, you need to go talk to other, straight cis men, and y'all need to figure this out by yourself, which is, I do agree that men need to do this work and challenge themselves and each other. But to suggest that we can't learn from women's experiences or from, non-binary folks and other people's experiences with masculine people is absurd, and actually plays into this patriarchal idea that only men have knowledge or have solutions.
Sure.
And in reality, the people who we've interacted with our whole lives often can provide us more perspective on where we should be going than we can. And and obviously we're stuck in this conditioning, and I just think it's so important to listen to other people's experiences with people like us to learn how to be better, because the idea that only men can teach us how to be men plays into the idea that that there's such a thing as a real man.
Sure.
I just want to go. Last week, we talked to D'Lo, and I found this article about how we can learn a lot about masculinity and the performance of masculinity. Well, maybe not the performance of masculinity. We added performance of masculinity, but from talking to trans men and understanding trans men's experiences, which I appreciated and I'm behind. And maybe this is just me doing it, but I also want to address this notion of men not doing their own emotional research and practicing their their own emotional discovery. And I think that it's a fine line and a balance between basically doing the work yourself and then also making sure that as we're all doing the work, or as men are doing that work, that they're including other perspectives in the mix, I guess, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think also, like, I think about, if you look at, nowadays there's a few more people in popular media talking about masculinity, or what we often see this term redefining masculinity. But often they fall into this trap, especially those who are maybe new to the conversation, by saying, like, no one's ever been talking about this. We should talk about this. I see that a lot amongst straight cis men who are writing about this. They'll say, like, this is a conversation we should be having because, women have been talking about their stuff this whole time. We need to talk about this. But what I just always want to throw in there is that women have been talking about it for like decades and decades, centuries. Black women have been writing about masculinity in America for, at least 50, 60, 70 years,
Sure.
And that's what I mean is that you go back and you read that stuff before we come in and say, hey, I just had a thought, like, maybe this is messed up, this thing that I do. It's like, well, go back and read, Audre Lorde Bell Hooks. And like, they were talking about this way before you were born, telling you how to be. The problem was that no man in your life ever showed you that book and said, yo, read this instead of what I'm telling you. And the problem is always that men come in and say, I know how to raise a boy because I was a boy. But frankly, I don't know how to raise a boy because I was raised a boy in this culture. And this culture is fucked up. So, what we need to do is read other people's thoughts, because often, other people have more empathy for the world. And if we take it back to film, the way that film impacts this in a way is that if film is a way to learn empathy, because you sit in that theater, you have to look at the screen, you have to put yourself in the character's shoes. If you think about it from this perspective, from a young age, most of the movies we watch are starring white men or cis white boys. So what we're being taught from a young age is empathy for them.
Yeah.
And in the same way, women are taught from birth have many more experiences being forced to feel empathy for men who don't express themselves than men ever have for women and for other people of other genders. So that's why I think it's so important that we challenge this notion that only men can teach us how to be men, because most men don't know how to be men.
Speaking of men, learning how to be men, there's this notion of like who hits on who, right? So, I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a mainstream movie where a man is like, man, I'm so tired of hitting on women. I wish that they would hit on us, and not actually having been exploited. And it's interesting because I'm
trying to rack my brain. I'm sure there's something, but there isn't, I don't think.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen it. I couldn't recall a time when that happened, and actually, I just can't recall it. Yeah, and I have had people tell me that. I've had dudes tell me that on a number of occasions because, as I've mentioned on the show, I feel very comfortable hitting on dudes, no problem with it. And talking about that with some guy friends, they were like, I wish women would do that more. I wish it wasn't always on me and da da da. And I'm wondering why, if I know people in my life that are saying that, I know that the other people who feel that way. So why isn't that being explored in movies?
I mean, when it does show up in movies, it's often played for laughs.
Yeah.
So it'll be like
the butt of the joke.
Yeah. A woman will hit on a shy or a non ideal man,
non-alpha. Right,
yeah.
Exactly. I was like a quote unquote beta dude or something.
And then they'll be surprised by it, and they'll have to go get coaching from one of those alpha dudes. I don't know,
Ryan Gosling.
Yeah. Or another way you might see it in film is in a film where the woman is not the main character, or we're seeing the scene from her perspective. She might try to hit on a guy. I think about that. What's that movie with? I'm blanking on her name. The blonde comedian.
Amy Schumer.
Amy Schumer.
Yeah.
The
Trainwreck.
Yes, Trainwreck. So
isn't
LeBron
in that?
Yeah, he's horrible.
Oh, really?
Oh,
damn.
LeBron's such a good actor.
Yeah.
He's fucking terrible. Anyways,
you might have a scene where a woman, or I think in He's Not That Into You, you might have a scene where a woman tries to hit on a man, but then the lesson that she has to learn is that
stay in your lane.
Yes, or you need to let men be men.
Yes,
that is often how it plays out. I mean, there are small, of course, in independent films and others, there are examples of these critiques we're talking about. But yeah, and I think that part of that is we at the end of the day, the point of a romantic film often is to make us feel safe in our world, in our perspective. So as much as you might have some gender flips or whatnot in the middle, by the end of the movie, it has to come back to what you're familiar with and comfortable with. So I think that's why we often see that, women hitting on men challenges the dominance of men. So the films always need to bring it back to, oh, men, you're okay. It's like assuage men, the insecurity of straight cis men, and which is weird to think that romantic films are often about like making straight cis men feel comfortable in the way that they pursue women, which is weird.
It's so crazy. We'll be right back. Hey guys, are you looking for some new headphones? Well, look no further. Studio is a company out of Sweden that aims to revolutionize the way that people see headphones, not just as a tech device, but also as an accessory. Right now, you can really only get headphones that can offer you one of two things, either style or tech. So Studio is going to bring you those fashionable headphones that actually give you proper sound quality and have those high-tech variations that you've been looking for. Now, Studio's been kind enough to offer our listeners 15% off. So if you head on over to studio.com and enter MASKulinity, that is all caps with a K, of course, as your discount code, you'll receive 15% off. Studio is out of Sweden, but they ship for free worldwide. So take advantage of that. I'm wearing my Studio headphones all day, every day now, and I love them. So please be sure to take advantage of that opportunity. And now back to the show. And we're back. So this is something that you cover in your film Love Reset, which I loved because I love the whole video game thing you did. I thought it was so dope. Anyway,
I mean, it's a little bit Black Mirror-ish, which is cool as shit, man. I love it.
Damn, I still have yet to watch that show.
You're not missing much.
Okay. So Love Reset, released in 2015, was all up on MTV. Didn't it win an award?
It was part of MTV's Look Different competition.
Oh, you're so humble about it.
Well, no. I mean, it was made out of winning a competition, so it was made out of.
I see.
So basically, Imran's baller.
So basically, it's great, awesome. So basically, the film draws a comparison between two people. One is a young white dude, and another one is a young brown woman, and essentially, like, you're drawing a comparison and how they're navigating dating, like what happens for them, and like they kind of earn points and stuff. It's a very interesting way of doing it. So can you just tell us a little bit about it and like what your objective was with that?
Yeah, it was working on two levels. One was a critique of media and media representations and how video games represent video games. Just like movies, from a young age, you see certain representations of masculinity and really simple things like you see if you get to the castle, you get, Mario gets Princess Peach, but to more extreme examples, like you see a very violent game where you're shooting a bunch of people and then the prize at the end is like a scantily clad woman. So I wanted to just kind of bring that up into our thought, but then on the other level, I was also thinking about how the way you learn about dating is kind of like a video game as a straight cis man, in that if you're talking with other men, on a basic level, it would be like, oh, did you score? And you've got that. It's a sports analogy, but often it has to do with like, oh, did you get to first base, second base, third base? But that's also the way that video games work. And there's points. It's like, oh, this guy over here has slept with this many women, and this guy over here has not slept with any women. And so you start to see like a hierarchy of masculinity that's created. Like this guy's more of a man than this guy. And so I wanted to show how that can be internalized in a very explicit, maybe over the top way.
It was really funny.
Where you see that. But also, one of the things that in the first half of the film, you see it from the perspective of the man, is this idea that it's not always that ends in extreme violence. I think one of the things that we often make the mistake of is like, I talked about Trump earlier, but you don't even always become Trump grabbing women without consent. It's often that you just don't know how to communicate with women, and you're hurting them or you're ignoring their signs, their cues, because you're so focused on the game in your head that you're trying to win. That's honestly, at the end of the day, for other men, and your insecurity of being seen as a real man from the perspective of other men. And you get so in your internal game, that you don't even understand what's going on in a bedroom or even in a conversation with someone of another gender. And so I wanted to show how the video game thing plays into that. But on the flip of that, I worked with an amazing cinematographer, Noshin Dadaboy, who's a South Asian woman, Pakistani woman, and she had an all women crew on that film, and so the second half of the film, we tried to work to show the perspective of brown women in the movie. You see that these two people interact and kind of casually meet each other, but part of it was what happens when you don't see yourself on screen at all falling in love. So if you look at it from one perspective, you've got straight cis men, white men particularly, growing up constantly thinking you're the hero, you're the love interest, and so that does one thing to you, gives you entitlement. But what happens when you don't see yourself falling in love, and then you have to go into that world, and white men don't even look at you, and you have to try to navigate it, and then you're with a brown guy, and at the end it's like, but brown men are trying to be white men, so then they're not looking at you, and then at the end of the day, it's also like you're trying to fit in there, so maybe you're not relating to black women and other women. So I mean, I think not to like keep talking about that short film. It's like
no,
please.
It's like
5
this
minutes,
is,
so you
yeah.
can just watch it. But the point being that I just wanted to get us to think about love from a different perspective. Because it's not working for anybody, and it's hurting a lot of people.
It's not working for anyone.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah. That was that.
As we continue on that topic, like how does intersectionality of race figure into this equation?
Yeah, because I as I started to say, it's like if you look at the top romantic films of all time in America, if you look at the 100, 200 most box office hits, almost none of them is the main character a black woman or any kind of woman of color. And in fact, in the top 25, none of them are except for The Bodyguard. And the Bodyguard, when I was doing this research, I went back and read the script for The Bodyguard, and it's called The Bodyguard. So if you really think about it, it's not about Whitney Houston. It's about Kevin Costner. So even if you include that, there aren't films that are at the very top. Meaning, and what's important about box office is not that they've made money, but that's probably the most seen. Those are the most seen films.
They're the most influential.
So if we think about that, it's like from a young age, as we were talking about before, we're conditioned to feel empathy, to put ourselves in the shoes of white people, particularly from the perspective of white men. But also, we don't even see white men loving black women, brown women. That's very rare in our most popular films. I mean, nowadays you might see it a little bit more, and that's because we have new creators behind the scenes. But that matters because that's conditioning all of us to think about love in a very narrow way, including men of color. So men of color, as much as we might be super aware of like the fact that films are racist, we might be really good at critiquing experiences in the world and be like, it's all about white men. It's all about white men. We often don't think about the fact that we were in there watching those same movies, and we've now started to think like, what's most beautiful? What does a love interest look like?
Let's pause right there because let's talk about The Big Sick, right?
I'd love to.
When it came out, a lot of South Asian men, including myself, were like, oh, representation. Ah, yes, it's a story about us. It's a story about our lives. Romantic comedy. We get the girl. Yay. But it turns out it's a lot more complicated than that, right?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that
well,
complication,
even
that complexity?
The idea of like getting the girl is racialized. I mean, because getting the girl means getting the white.
God, I hate
girl.
this criticism, but anyway, go ahead.
I mean, that's really what it's meant always. And so, and I get it because like that movie, if I'm able to step back and say, I grew up in a mostly white town in Springfield, Illinois. I don't know why we're high-fiving. But,
I grew up in a white town.
Oh, okay. Awesome. I thought you were just like, yeah, what town? So I relate to the what it feels like to see, oh wow, that guy looks like me. He has an experience like me. I grew up Muslim, and I had challenges with my faith and religion. I identify with like being afraid to tell your parents about like dating, about your
identity, your new modernized identity within America, right?
Yes. But at the same time, the problem in that film is that it takes so much of
the capital that it earns, almost.
Well, it's so centered on that perspective, at the expense of other people's perspectives. Because I also grew up in that town with my sisters, with other, South Asian Muslim women who had their own experiences, which are worth representing, and not only worth representing, but worth not discarding. And I think the problem in The Big Sick is that it's not only that it doesn't represent South Asian women's perspectives very well at all, but that it often demeans those women as a result. Because when you don't give women of color an opportunity to speak in a film or to really tell you their story and for us to see it, then when you have like a small joke in the film about the ashes of the pictures of the brown women who your mom wanted you to marry, well, then that becomes actually a kind of a very aggressive joke and a demeaning, dehumanizing moment. And then
they're literally being thrown away in a box.
Yes.
Like and the whole movie.
And then you couple that with the fact that the love interest is a white woman, and you start to see that what comes into the movie is this historic story. It's not just, movies never exist just in the theater in the 2 hours that you watch it. You bring the context of the world you live in into them and the history of cinema, and that movie plays into the idealization of white women, which that also negates brown women's experiences and black women's experiences. And so that whole cocktail of stuff going on in that movie makes it very interesting to talk about. But ultimately, I think if you really go out there and read, there's so many South Asian women who've written about how it made them feel like violently hurt. And so I think that's the perspective we should think about in relation to that movie.
I mean, I guess the big question for me, is how can dudes have meaningful, connected relationships if they're just expected to acquire women and have them do the emotional work for them?
Well, you can.
Okay. Cool. Glad we agree.
And I think to echo what we were saying before, I think we have to both challenge each other as men for sure. We need to interrupt when we hear other men kind of espousing these ideals of how to treat women or what love's supposed to be like.
Women, yeah, sure.
Yeah, but we also need to think about talking to women and listening to other people's experiences, reading, watching, listening to this podcast, for instance. You have to put yourself out there and you have to be uncomfortable. The idea that this will be a comfortable process is it's untenable. It doesn't make sense. Because the whole point of the world in which we live in is to make you comfortable in being in power, right? The people in power are supposed to be in comfort because the society was designed that way. So if you expect to just kind of sit back and chill and be like, I'm going to be a different man today, that's not going to work. You actually have to put yourself in these conversations, in these spaces where you feel really uncomfortable, where you have to talk to your dad about what you learned as a kid, where you have to talk to your mom about, how they were treated or whoever your parents were. You have to talk to your friends, and every day it's got to be a process. And like you were saying earlier, no matter how much you talk about it, no matter how much you think about it, you will still make mistakes. You will still fall into these traps when you actually go to date, when you actually go to be in a relationship, and you have to be okay to admit that and to be able to talk about it with your partners and to be honest that this is hard.
Awesome. That's great. I mean, I have nothing to add.
I think it's emblematic of what you started this conversation of. Is there's been a long tradition of a system, and that is the male gaze, and that is the white male being at the center of the story, and they're the hero. And it is a lot of times when you're I personally am having a conversation with a woman, it sounds horrible, but I will sometimes disregard what they're saying, or I'll kind of tune out. Why? Because the system has taught me that they are not the hero of the story. The system has taught me, whether it's through cinema, whether it's through TV, whether it's through the everyday conditioning that the people who have watched those movies then, replay to us, is that I am the center of the story. It is my hero. It's my heroism that's going to get me there, right. And you're just there to accompany me. You're just there to be a secondary kind of player in this story. And it's got to take that perspective to see that we are then, again, just replaying the said system that we've been taught. We're replaying the conditioning that we've been conditioned.
Yes.
And it's going to take work. Yeah. And the work it's such a surprising thing to say, the work is going to take listening, right?
Yeah.
The work is not talking. The work is not going out there, standing on your pedestal, right. Preaching your can't think of the word I'm looking for, but preaching, your sermon or teaching people the ways of the world. No, the work is going to be going out there and listening to others, listening to people who haven't had the opportunity to be at the center of the story, listening to the people who haven't had any access to be a part of the story.
Right.
Any way that this is going to change, any way that the paradigm is going to change and shift to be open and accessible and equal for us all, is going to take the work of listening, which I'm not good at.
And I also think, just to real quick piggyback on what you're saying is that as men of color, if we want to fight white supremacy and the racist system, that's also not going to happen if we're at the same time demeaning women of color.
Sure.
Because that patriarchy works hand in hand with white supremacy. It's all about dominance. And if we buy into the idea that we have to dominate women of color, then you're never going to be able to get white men to be like, don't dominate me. If you come into that room and say dominance is the way to be, then how are you ever going to change this racist country when it's based on that same dominance? And it's based on the exact same dominance of black women, and of indigenous women. That is what the country is founded on. So if we don't fix that in our own communities, in our own families, we're not going to be able to fix that out there in the world, or we're going to face challenges. So, I think we just need to, like you said, listen and be better.
Yeah, well, I mean, I want to just say that, thank you for saying that. I almost have a tear in my eye because I feel like that is something that for some reason is so difficult for people to actually absorb. But I mean, I think it's difficult to challenge your own behavior. And I feel like the fundamental thing that's going to be necessary is for us to actually have that goal and be actively invested in making that goal happen for ourselves every day. Otherwise, it's not happening. White supremacy will continue. Sexism will continue. All of that will continue. And so it's unless we take it upon ourselves, individually and in community, to do exactly what you just said, we will continue to be fucked. So,
and let's acknowledge that you're in this room talking about this as a black woman, and that's always how it's been. And so I think this is such a great example of this conversation is always being led by the people who are more vulnerable, people who don't need to be there, but they understand, because they're vulnerable, they understand that they're coming to us, they're coming to us as men, as cis men, and being like, yo, help us out. We're trying to help you out. I don't know. I just wanted to appreciate that you're doing this work when so many men of color are not, But anyways, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all. This is such a great conversation. Thank you so much for coming, for being here, for sharing yourself, your work, and everything. I always thank Ramoy. Thank you for being awesome. This is
shout out to Samantha.
Yeah, thank you.
And shout out to me always saying her name Sam and being like a jerk about it. That's fine.
It's okay. A lot of people call me Sam. It's all good. But yeah, we just want to really just thank you for listening to this conversation, you guys. Please pass the word. Have these conversations in your own spaces because, like we just said, it's really all about all of us taking it upon ourselves to not to quote Gandhi again, but just be the change you want to see in the world. You know what I mean? Yeah. I just.
Oh, he was shitty towards women.
Yeah.
But
I mean, he was, but I'm glad we're acknowledging. But yes. That sentence still holds true, even if he had his own issues. But yeah, so before we go, Imran, is there something you want to plug? Where can we find you?
Cooking with Samantha or something? You guys working on something?
Can we please write a movie together?
I'm down.
I'm not a screenwriter. I'll learn and then I'll come. Yeah.
So I'm working on a script with Samantha. You can just follow me on Twitter. My name's Imran Siddiqui, so it's at Imran Siddiqui. Thank you for having me.
It's been dope, man.
Yeah, it's been so awesome. Siddiqui, 2 E's, by the way. I'll post it because I tried to find you with an I and it didn't work. There are a lot of Imran Siddiquis with an I.
There's actually another Imran Siddiqui on Twitter who's more famous than me. And he spells it with the Q-U-I, but I'm Q-U-E-E. So.
Yeah. I found that guy too.
No, I love him. He's doing great work.
Love that dude. My bad.
All right, cool. So you guys will be posting all of Imran's information on the gram, on the gram, yes. On Twitter and on Facebook. So you can find us at Masculinity Podcast on Facebook, at Masculinity Pod on Twitter, always with a K. Also, if you want those headphones, make sure you put a K. So thank you guys so much for listening. This has been a really great conversation. My name is Samantha Nzesi.
My name is Ramoy George Phillip, the first.
And this has been Masculinity. Thanks for listening.
Peace.
Ciao.